Mhm. And so, do you believe that any amount of conservatism and any amount of traditionalism can make you? I think it can make you less of a sinner, but I don't think that it can make you not a sinner. And so, like, this is just like a point that I'm trying to get across. Is just like no matter how traditional you get, you're not gonna. It's not gonna stop you from not sinning at all, right? You can
Oh,
you can beat
yeah.
yourself over the head over like about it, but at the end of the day, you do have to like repent.
So
Uh,
it's a little bit more complicated than that, especially if you're talking about like Catholicism and like what Christian sin. And I mentioned earlier, I kind of said it in passing, like you want to achieve theosis, and theosis just means godification. Like,
mm,
so you have the Council of Nicaea, right? It's the council which states in explicit words that Christ is God. And at the Council of Nicaea, I forget which saint was it that said it, but one of the writings of the Council of Nicaea, they say God became man so that man could through grace become God. So everyone is called to that. What does the word religion mean, right? Religion. It's a doing again, religion of tying again yourself to God. You're returning to God. That's what the word religion is. It's your ascent back to God. So obviously nobody purports that just because you live a healthier lifestyle or live whatever any of these superficial things may be, even going to church every single day, receiving the sacraments every single day, they're not going to keep you away from sin. If anything, you need those things more and more. You need confession, especially more and more, um, the more you sin. Every church, it's a church. What's the unifying thing of every church? Every church is full of what? Of sinners. So it's not like nobody, very, very few people, very few saints even have the claim to fame of being like, oh, they never did a huge sin. Like maybe St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Therese of Lisieux, like a couple of saints that we know of in history that reasonably speaking did not commit any grave mortal sin. They say
mhm,
that St. Thomas Aquinas, when he died, he passed by purgatory, he knelt, he genuflected, like short knelt, and then stood back up and went to heaven. Like that was how
mm,
pure he was. But like there is a way, like you're meant to achieve theosis. You're a wounded creature, right? Original sin, it leaves a wound in you. And what can you do with a wound? You can either let it fester and grow and get worse, or you can actually do something to help it heal. Will it ever completely, fully, 100% heal? No, because there are the three grave dangers, right? There's the world, there's the devil, and then so you have these things that are constantly attacking you. There's the devil, especially after the world has gone out, and then there's the flesh, which is your own body, your own flesh, which goes against your soul sometimes, right? So
mhm,
a lot of the times people will be like, "Oh, I have demons," right? But most of the time, it's actually just their own flesh or the
yeah,
world and the people around them who are influencing them to sin. But that's just a side note. Anyways, there were saints like, for example, Saint Anthony the Great, I think it was, who lived in the deserts of Egypt, and he got to such a level of holiness, the devil had to physically hurt him. He had to physically fight him in where he had locked himself into his fort to pray. The devil physically fought with him, like physical blows, just to get him to sin. And he would fight back. He wouldn't go and succumb to that. So you can, you're meant to. None of your circumstances will help you, of course, to stay away from sin, but the essential way to stay away from sin is to pray, hope, not worry.
mhm,
Go and receive the sacraments. Obviously, I'm talking about this in a Catholic context. You're
yeah,
meant to receive the sacraments. You're meant to go to confession. You're meant to go and reverently attend mass and receive the Eucharist in a state of grace and pray and grow in sanctification, grow in all the virtues. And if you're able to consistently do this, which is no small feat, you will, you'll start by getting rid of all mortal sin, right? And
mhm,
everybody thinks that's like the end of the spiritual life, but it really isn't, because everybody who's gone through that, everybody who's like, I've gotten rid of all my bad addictions, I've gotten rid of all my bad, like general, like big vices, like I'm not going and getting drunk anymore, I'm not watching porn anymore, I'm not doing all of these, like the big stuff, you know what I'm saying? Like the big stuff, I've gotten that out of the way. And then they begin to realize I'm still a bad person, or I still have like, I'm still like, I'm still not that good. I'm still doing things which, yeah, they're not mortally sinful. They're not things which send me to hell, right?
Mhm.
But they are things which are still venial sins. I'm being rude to others. I hate others, things like that, which we all, it's so hard to get rid of. Anybody who's tried to genuinely go and iron out their soul like that, it's so hard to do. It can be done, but it's a lot of virtue. That's why purgatory exists. It's to purge you, purgatory, right? To
Mhm.
purge you of all of those bad things which are left over in your soul, not mortal things, not things that kill your soul and send you to hell, but little things which stop you from going to heaven, like cleaning you, purging you before going to heaven, right?
Mhm.
So you have all that, so I would say you
It-
say living traditionally. I'm assuming you mean like adhering to church teaching, going to church regularly, all this stuff. Because like
mhm.
traditionally can mean all sorts of things to different people. I'm
Yeah.
assuming you mean like in the Catholic sense, right?
Yeah. I like
So,
I guess the way that I'm like thinking about it is like it is like a tough topic. I feel like I do agree with you that it is possible, right? And I do think that is something that requires an intense amount of faith in God. And so for me personally, like
well,
one thing that I just want to like put out there is just like not everyone can do this, and like I know that like it may feel like everyone should be able, or like we want everyone to be able to do this, but in a world where, and I'm just thinking strictly like, I guess logically, I'm not thinking about the faith necessarily. I'm just thinking about it as like as the world is dynamically, if everyone were to be faithful completely and to be meditating always, you wouldn't get anything done, right? Like I
so
guess
that's
that's where you have to have faith in God in order to provide for you. And so like it's like one of
well,
those I don't know, like yeah.
yeah, I get what you mean. It's well, I didn't say that everybody had to live like a monastic
Yeah,
lifestyle and like
yeah.
isolate themselves from the we're meant to be, so the phrase is like we're meant to be in the world, but not
Mm,
of the world. You're still meant to be in the world. Even the most isolated of monks will still go and visit a priest or somebody occasionally, also to receive food, also to receive the sacraments, all that
yeah,
kind of stuff. Like
because they're
even the
dependent as well,
hermits,
right?
yeah, no, absolutely. We're meant to go and like we're meant to have other people. We're meant to do all this, and we're
Hmm.
meant to be out there working. You're meant to be working and praying, right? That was the motto of Saint Benedict:
Hmm.
"Ora et labora," work and pray. So, work can be all sorts of different things, obviously, but yeah, when we're talking about your day, if anything, it's a much harder calling. It's actually a much like in some ways, there's a lot of virtue to the monastic life. There's a lot of virtue. I say that because I mentioned Saint Anthony, right? Who was a monastic, basically the founder of monastic life, right? But there's a lot of virtue to being in the world, living a life that is average, quote unquote, but sanctifying that life. Having a home where you walk into the home and you have the pictures and the icons, and you have somewhere to pray, and you do pray before bed. My father, for example, my father is a pilot. My father literally, his schedule is so erratic that he doesn't get to go to church many times when he should be able to. But whenever he has the chance, he does go to church and he does go to confession and faithfully observe everything. The church does allow for, dispensations. If you're somebody who can't regularly make it, that is one of the excuses listed under reasons why you are excused from going, say, to every feast day and every Sunday to church. That's
Hmm.
like a very practical point. But anyways, so that doesn't mandate a lifestyle which is copy paste. God demands different things from all sorts of different people. However, all of these lives, all the lives of the saints, what do they have in common? They have the sacraments, they have detachment, and they have the theological virtues, right? So you mentioned having faith in God. It's good you mentioned that because that's one of the three theological virtues, right? You have faith, hope, and charity. So you need faith, you need hope, and you need charity. Anybody who doesn't have all three, they're not being Catholic. They're not Catholic because you need all three. And these are virtues which we must pray to God to give us. There are acts of faith, acts of hope, and acts of charity which you pray every morning to give you those virtues, that virtue of faith in God, hope for God's plan in the future, and charity towards your brothers. So you need all those things. And those all take different forms in all our lives. And then you have detachment, which I mentioned, which is basically making it so you're able to walk in front of a beautiful, like juicy steak and be like, you know what? I don't need that. That's a very like, general example. Maybe doesn't apply to everyone, but you know what I mean, right? Like
Hmm.
having the ability to say no, even when something is very, like basically to take it or leave it. That is an incredibly powerful virtue. And it's something which pretty much every saint had and developed. Saint Augustine, for example, who was extremely lustful in his youth, he was born by his mother was a Christian and wanted him to be Christian, but he fell into sort of weird Gnostic, paganistic um, astrologist sects, and he would like constantly be chasing after women. He had his famous catchphrase, which was, "Oh Lord, make me chaste, but not yet, not now. I can be chaste later, not now." And he developed such great virtue and a great love for God out of that because he was able to detach away from that. So I think maybe you did not like maybe I didn't explain myself in the best way as I could have earlier, but we really are all called to that. We won't all get to it. We know we won't all, and that's just between you and God. But we are all called to that holiness.
Hmm.
It'll look different for every single person. Every saint looks different, but it is only one path. There's many walks on that path, but it really is only one path. So, um, like for example, somebody who's extremely well studied and understanding in the faith can still end up going to hell, while the medieval peasant the serf who lived in the middle of nowhere but genuinely had real faith and received the sacraments with true, contrition for his sins and true like veneration for them, his love of God is much greater. We're measured by our love of God, and that takes the form of these really, really beautiful virtues that I mentioned: faith, hope, charity, and that detachment from the world. So I'd say, yeah, we are all called to it. It looks different for everyone, but we are all called to it. And we shouldn't treat it like an excuse and be like, oh, well, I can't be like a monk. Yeah, but you don't have to be like a monk. You can be in lots of other ways, but you're not excused from those virtues. And
Hmm.
we all kind of deep down, we know that. Like we know that we shouldn't be so easily swayed by smelling fast food and wanting to go eat fast food. I
Yeah.
give you one example, right? Or we know we shouldn't be so easily glued to our screen or so because that's the
These
world
these
trying
are
to
all
manipulate us.
forms of temptation, right? And
Yeah,
so,
yeah, absolutely. We know we shouldn't be like enslaving ourselves to these things. We all know. And so that call to detachment and that call to faith, hope, and charity, it's there for everyone. We all need it. So yeah, I'd say it takes different forms, but we really are all called to that for sure.
nice. Well, that was a good talk about faith.
Yeah,
I
no,
think,
I really appreciate that.
yeah. I wanted to talk more about, like, I like talking about religion and faith, and I have a background in Hinduism and Buddhism and things like that, and as well as Catholicism. And so like there are a lot of parallels between the philosophies of Hinduism and Buddhism that tie back to the understanding of Catholicism and Christianity in general, right? Um, and so like uh, it's always good to see the parallels between different societies and how they relate to your own, right? Um, I couldn't give you like I could give you some examples of that, but I don't want to get into it too much. But yeah, it is kind of interesting. The way that like you talk about detachment, it's very similar to some Buddhist philosophies.
Yeah, I mean, in
Um,
that they developed a lot of detachment is a
yeah.
natural virtue. So it's something which you can pray to God for it, but it's not a theological virtue. Like
Hmm.
the Muslims living in the desert or the Russians living in the middle of the cold in Siberia have developed great natural virtue, but it's not something which, so, Christ very clearly says, few people will walk the path, and that nobody goes to heaven except through me and through baptism, through the waters of baptism. So
Hmm.
I would sort of back off from those things a little bit because of the views of their views of God, for example, of what God even is, are completely opposed to the Catholic understanding. And even a lot of their even some of their monastic life is very, very opposed. Like, for example, for the longest time, the Buddhists had no conception of a woman being a monastic,
Hmm.
or they had no conception of, oh, there's a lot of odd stuff in there. Like, there's unholy vegetables in Buddhism that they're not allowed to eat, probably because some monk really didn't like them.
Yeah, I mean,
But
like
yeah, no, there's a lot of
when I
beautiful
talk about
virtues
that,
there.
I'm simply talking about like the philosophical side. I'm not necessarily talking about
Yeah,
the
but I
more
mean, it's
religious
hard sort of to
traditions.
detach those things, right? Because yeah, we can kind of sit down and analyze them from the worldly perspective, right? Of like, oh, these people have these many virtues, these people have that many virtues, or these people did like built this big of a
Well,
temple, and these other people built that big of a temple.
it's not
But at the end of
necessarily
the
that
day,
I'm looking at their virtues. It's more that I'm looking at their texts, and I'm able to see that there is influences between um like Sanskrit texts that go back into like Buddhism, and actually like I don't know exactly how much of a spread it may have had, but like there is influences of Eastern philosophy in Christianity as well as like vice versa. At least like in more recent times, it is like it is interesting to see the other perspectives. That's just like what I'm trying to get at.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, you won't really, it probably won't do much profit to your soul, but it certainly it reminds us that God does create all man with. So God ensouls us, right? God breathes a soul into every man.
mhm,
It breathes a soul into your mother may give you your body, but that body receives a soul from God. It's God who breathes that soul into you. And that soul, by virtue of it being made in the image of God, receives with it certain qualities and things which make man very unique. Like, for example, every society, even the most remote, uncontacted of tribesmen living in the middle of nowhere, have some conception of sacrificing to some god, as
mhm,
disordered as that may look like, as they may be sacrificing children, women, whatever, to this god, but at least they understand that basic concept of there is a god that we have to sacrifice to. They understand basic justice, like that there's some badness to like killing, there's some badness
mhm.
to stealing. They won't fully understand it because they don't have the fullness of truth which is contained within the church, but they do have some sort of like bits and pieces of it which are left over from inside of their soul. They also have all the bad stuff, which is
Yeah.
from original sin. So you do, that's just a thing which is common with all humans. I mentioned the Muslims. The Muslims have incredible natural virtue. They have lots of very detached people. They have lots of very disciplined and devout and zealous souls in there. But when you have that fullness of the fullness of truth in the church, that's when really the beautiful things can happen. There's a reason why European civilization was the best and was the pinnacle of all time. There's a reason why when Christianity arrived in China, nearly all of the country under the emperor converted, only for that to be reversed and weird stuff happened historically. But it was actually the Nestorians that I implore you, if you do have the time, one of the most beautiful things you can read, it's unfortunately from the heretical sect of the Nestorians, but it does inside of it include a lot of truth. There's this really beautiful limestone inscription in China called the Nestorian slate, and the Nestorian slate is essentially a description of the practice of Christianity from how the Chinese saw it and how they imported it. And it includes the command of the emperor. The emperor commanded them to build churches. He commanded them to get more priests and all of
Mhm.
this stuff from the church in Syria that it was visiting them. And the church in Syria visited them, and they began writing and they were like, these guys, they pray 7 times a day, they fast, they have their mass, they sacrifice once a week, just like the Catholic Church does. And he describes it in such a beautiful way. So there's a reason why, the pinnacle, right, is when it's under Christianity, when society collaborates with God, with Christ, you get the pinnacle of civilization, the pinnacle of art, What's the
Mhm.
most, like, renowned and most thought-provoking art, right? It's everything that deals with man, original sin, and Christ, because that touches deeply into our soul, right? That really, like, digs deep into our existence, everything to do with God and Christ. So I would say, yeah, there's some virtue to a lot of those people, like the monastics living in the middle of Nepal or whatever. Plenty
Mhm.
of very well detached people who have incredible discipline, incredible zeal in their souls. But if you really want to see the fullness of that beauty, the truth, the full, unadulterated truth, right? It's the church. It's the beauty of the church, right? It's in the saints of the church, the lives of the saints, the miracles of the church, right? That's that is really that's when you see that, nothing else will be the same.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Um, do you want to talk about something else? So, like, one thing I just realized is we didn't actually even introduce you. We just went
I
straight
mean,
into
yeah,
talking, but yeah.
we just kinda went straight into, like, talking about Da
Yeah.
Vinci Resolve,
Yeah, exactly.
which
So if you
was
want
really the
to,
only Olympics topic we did.
if you want to introduce yourself and who you are, and then I can
Yeah, I guess you
place it
could
all
cut
together.
this part you could cut
Exactly.
this part and put it at the beginning
Exactly.
or something like that, yeah, so it's clear.
So who are you, Denji?
Well, my name is Alex, but yeah,
Yeah,
I
Alex.
go by Denchi online. I have a YouTube channel, a website, and a bunch of other stuff I have online. And I make videos, I write articles, all this sorts of stuff. And yeah, no, it's I'm very happy to be on here doing another interview. I think this is the second time I do an interview after I did that one with what was it, Brody Robertson did one when I was like
Hmm.
15 or like 16 or something, which is so cringe. It
Yeah.
wasn't that bad of an interview. But like, yeah, it's I guess that is who I am, yeah.
Yeah, and so like I was looking into your channel and like one thing that stands out to me is that you draw a lot actually. You're like into art and you actually draw sometimes.
Not as much as recently, but yeah.
Mm. Do you so like you don't draw as much anymore?
I don't remember the last time I drew. I did do a couple of like videos with some drawing
Mm.
and stuff. I used to draw a lot more when I was younger, but it's never been a huge thing that I do now. I
Okay.
mostly make the Linux videos.
You want to talk about your music at all and like what you're doing
Uh,
currently?
Not really. No, I don't really have that much to talk about with that.
All good, all good. Um, I guess we could talk about Linux Fest and
Oh yeah.
going to Linux Fest. Mm.
So I'll try to come this year probably. I'll put out an announcement once I decide that I'm able to. It'll depend on a couple of things, but yeah, I mean, if I'm able to, I'd love to. It's a really nice opportunity. Last time I went, it was really terrible because they did not record my session. I had to record
Mhm.
it myself and I uploaded it on my channel, but the camera was recording, but I'm assuming they pointed it in the wrong way because it looked like it was pointing straight at the ceiling and not at me. The same thing happened to Luke Smith's talk, which really sucked because his talk seemed interesting. It was about like Bash scripting and like 101 Bash tips and tricks that you can use, which is like the nerdiest title ever.
Yeah.
But it seemed pretty cool, like that I would have probably wanted to go there and hear that. But yeah, sadly it was not recorded. So yeah, what can you do?
And so where is Linux Fest
Oh yeah,
located?
sorry, I should probably. It's the Linux Fest, Southeast Linux Fest, which is in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, okay. So I saw some videos about you talking about Tor and like other you're kind of you care about security, I guess, in some ways, like encryption and things like that. And so like my channel is kind of about cybersecurity and like that's like one of my main
Uh-huh.
interests is just cybersecurity and getting people interested in cybersecurity because I think it is a field that is gonna matter a lot more in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about
That's
like
what I
for
was trying
work or whatever, I
to.
don't really know much about that. But when it
Yeah.
comes to your own personal like digital hygiene and being sure you keep your footprint online pretty clean,
Yeah.
then yeah, those are all things which I think matter. Like especially if you're going online and like going and like I don't know, doing anything financial or anything like that, you want to be
Hmm.
sure that you're not gonna get like your information stolen or whatever. But I made the videos on Tor and everything to try to just, like, as educational videos. I really hope people don't watch those and, like, start, like, buying drugs and stuff because that's not good for you.
Yeah.
But I even say it at the beginning of the video, I'm like, "This video is for educational purposes only. Please don't buy drugs," something like
Yeah.
that. But I think the most valuable skill is just being able to understand what, like, how computers and networks work so you understand when you can be tracked and how easy it is for you to be tracked. Like Tor
Mhm.
is pretty crazy because it does like pretty much using the Tor browser, you're unless you do something really stupid, you're pretty much covered on all bases for most of the ways people can track you on the web at least. Because
Mhm.
the IP address is taken care of, even if you're on the clear net. The Everything to do with, like, fingerprinting online, they take care of for the most part. There's a lot of anti-fingerprinting measures. It doesn't come with JavaScript turned off, but typically you do turn it off anyways. And I think this is kind of like a side note. I think it is pretty fascinating to see how people work under those constraints. Like the way that they've been able to develop apps and like websites that work entirely without the use of JavaScript because they
Mhm.
know that everybody's going on them with it turned off.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. That's interesting because it really forces you to go and
You
work
gotta
with like some good
think outside the
constraints and
box
stuff.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, you gotta be creative, which is pretty cool. It also means that it's easier to work with those websites on like older devices or
Mhm.
devices that are a little bit slower with no JavaScript support, stuff like that, which is always a good one. But yeah, I don't really make a lot of videos like that anymore, but yeah, it's a fascinating topic for sure.
What are your thoughts on like cybersecurity in general and like getting people interested in it? Um,
Not really anything. I don't have a lot of like I said, I'm not really interested in working in it or doing anything, so it's like
mm. It's just
my
personal,
thoughts on
like
cyber.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like, I guess if we're talking, if you mean cybersecurity, if you're talking about, like, what the word for it would be, like,
Personal cybersecurity, I guess. I don't
yeah, there's a
know.
there's an actual word for it. Oh man, it's on the tip of my tongue. It's it's something with, like, OPSEC, yeah.
Operational
You're
security,
talking
yeah.
about Yeah, if you're talking about your own personal OPSEC, I think that's a valuable skill for anybody using the internet. Even little kids, like even as little kids, we were always told, don't put your real name online, don't tell people your address or your phone number, don't
Mhm.
go to social media, don't like they would tell us pretty obvious like tips and pointers which even grown adults don't do. Like either that or they get out of the habit of it after they're kids. They think they're immune above it, but really kind of we're all enslaved
Mhm.
by a lot of that tracking and a lot of these bad things. So basic digital hygiene, like I said, basic digital like security, OPSEC. That's just a life skill. If you're using the internet, you should know these skills because you can get screwed over pretty easily, maybe by some kind of hacker, some kind of not even a hacker, like a scammer of sorts.
Mhm.
It's easy. It's real easy. So yeah, OPSEC matters. But when it comes to cybersecurity, like as an industry or whatever, I really don't know the first thing about it, and I'm not super interested. So it's like my relationship to cybersecurity is like my relationship to like machine farming with beetroots. Like it's not something that I'm particularly knowledgeable on or fond of. It exists, sure, but I don't really know a lot about it.
Yeah, that's all good. I was just wondering, like, I guess we could talk about um DNS and like your new DNS video, or we could talk about the open frameworks and how they're getting locked down, or open front ends, open source front ends. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So on the DNS thing, I just made a little video on how to make a blocker so you could go and put that DNS server into your phone or your web or your Google Chrome or whatever or your
Mhm.
computer and it will block anything that you tell it to. You could either manually compile websites or there are pre-existing lists that are constantly being updated online that you can put into it and it will block all sorts of stuff like ads, trackers, and inappropriate content, social media, all these kinds of things. So it's really good as like a child filter or even just like a family filter for your whole network and stuff.
Yeah.
There's also mainstream ones. Like I know Cloudflare has a family filter, but I'd recommend running your own because the ones which are maintained on GitHub, for example, are a lot more thorough. Especially like for ads and blockers, there's no public ones. So if you want a thorough ad blocking DNS, that's a good one. Yeah.
Mhm. And so, yeah, I mean, we could talk about front ends and how they're
Oh
getting
yeah, that
API
too.
locked as well. Yeah.
So I mentioned this in a recent article that I made. I want to probably make a video out of that article. We'll see how that goes. But
Mhm.
essentially, it used to be the case, right, that you'd turn like for a second, and then you'd look back on the internet, and there were like 10 new open source front ends for like Twitter or whatever. Like, there's like three open source front ends for Reddit. There's like 15 for Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all this kind of stuff. There's like a huge trend in the 2020s and even like late 2010s and whatnot that people were making open source front ends like Knitter and
Mhm.
stuff for looking at mainstream social media. And now that all those social media sites are locking their APIs behind paywalls, locking their APIs and access to tweets and stuff, um, behind money, or for example with Reddit, they're locking down the API or whatever. It's made those open source front ends harder and harder to make. I think it's actually a pretty good thing, honestly, because at the end of the day, all you're doing is making a tool which makes it like a little bit less annoying to be enslaved. Because
Mhm.
all the social media is, it's just enslaving you. And so making an open source front end for that doesn't fix it. It's the same thing as my opinion with the Fediverse. Like nobody goes and starts using the Fediverse without already having at least some familiarity with Twitter, if not having been a Twitter user for a while. Like, name me one person who's like, my first experience with social media was the Fediverse. Like, pretty much nobody. It's all
Mhm.
a continuation or a cope with the pre-existing social media addiction, right? Or not even necessarily addiction, but just like the habit of it, I guess, right? So same thing with the front ends. Nobody starts using Knitter or something like, what's the other one? Like the Reddit ones without already having been exposed to Reddit or Knitter. And
Yeah.
that's not a or Twitter. And that's not a good thing. Like, it should be, we should stay away from those things. If they help you use it less, I guess it's good, but it's the same as like nicotine pouches. The nicotine pouch isn't really going to get rid of your smoking addiction. Plenty of people who use the pouches go back on smoking again. So like it just gets you addicted to a new thing.
Mhm.
So I know in some of my videos, like I made a video on RSS a couple of years back, and I was like, yeah, I mean, if you want an RSS feed off of Twitter, you can get it off of Knitter, which is already bad that you need to do that. But the fact that that's something which the fact that that's something which people want to, like, actively consume, I think that's the problem. We should just
Mhm.
stop using these social medias, and that's why I made that video called "Why I Don't Have a Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, anything like that," because I just think that it's same thing with the Fediverse. I just think that it's just a massive, like, waste of time, and I know people like this personally. Like, I knew somebody who I would sit down and try to talk to him, and half the time, he'd be looking at his phone and going, like, on Twitter, and I met many people that I've met who are like that, and you can tell when you speak to somebody, you can tell that they use social media. You can kinda, like, begin to get this picture in your mind because they all have the same opinions, they all have the same thoughts, they've kind of been homogenized, and it's really, really bad. You try to talk about something which is actually outside of that sphere, and their brains like shut down. It's crazy. So once you start noticing it, it's crazy. But yeah,
I think
in
one
that
thing to
article
like
about the
add on
front end,
this though, is just like when I disconnected from social media completely, I was also kind of like out of the loop sometimes because I wasn't necessarily in touch with all the news that was going around. But that actually allowed for more conversation because people actually had to tell me what's going on in the world and like they wanted to talk to me about like news and like things that are happening. So it was kind of interesting. I don't know, like
uh,
it is one of those things that you
I mean, I
lose
guess that's
from.
one benefit of not listening to the news. I
Yeah.
mean, I've actually never heard that one before. That's a pretty good one. But yeah, I mean, I generally advocate staying like completely away from the news. The
Hmm.
news is like for most of my life, the news was just something that we would put on in the background to listen to while we were
Yeah.
doing other things, which is like so bad, right? It's like such a bad habit. And the problem with that is you go and you start worrying about things which really are irrelevant to you. Like,
Yeah.
I the way that I put it is this way: whatever's happening on the news, it actually occurring, like, that event you're seeing depicted on the news has less of an impact on your life as watching the news about the event has on your life. You're more impacted by the consumption of the news of that event than the actual event in question. So,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, it would be best to completely like, there's a lot of people like, same thing with social media. I made that article on my website that's called Reddit Revelation. I was, like, 13 years old, and I was, like, using my dad's phone or something to go on the Reddit app, which
Mhm.
had been inexplicably downloaded on there, and I just start going on it, and every day I would go to the Kerbal Space Program Reddit sub, which is where, because I was really into Kerbal Space Program when I was, like, 13,
Yeah.
and I even made Kerbal Space Program videos. I have an old channel that has a bunch of Kerbal Space Program videos that I used to make. But anyways, I would go on that, like,
Deep,
every day, like,
deep Alex lore right there.
yeah, yeah, I mean, it's not even that deep of a lore, like, it was not that long ago. But anyways, it was only, like, what, 6 years ago? Nah, that's a long time ago. But anyways, so, yeah, I would go to Reddit every day, and then I started looking at posts and stuff like that, and I was like, "Man, I just really don't like this." Like, there's just a lot of stuff on here which agitates you. There's a lot of stupid, like, even back then, well, this was after the elections too, so, like, everything was, like, all weird and, like, that was, like, when Reddit became really soy tier, you know?
Yeah.
But regardless, I think this would have happened with any other social media. I went on it and I was like, "Man, this is, like, really bad." And so what did I do? I uninstalled the app because my logic was, well, you know what? I was having a good day until I purposefully opened this app and now I'm having a bad day. You know what would have fixed this? If I just didn't have the app in the first place. Like,
Mhm.
the stuff which I'm reading itself has no impact on me. It's the fact that I'm reading it that's making me feel one way or another. That's
Yeah.
how propaganda, that's how agitprop works. And so I don't know, maybe I'm just somebody who's particularly sensitive to that kind of stuff. I'm sure people build up a tolerance, which is kind of sad, right? But at the end of the day, you would have never like, I think of people having arguments on Twitter, which is just like such a ridiculous, like, foreign concept to me, that people have arguments on Twitter. And it's like, you know what would have, you would have never gotten into this argument if you just didn't have Twitter, right? Or you would have never gotten, and I understand that doesn't apply to everything because we, like I said, we have to be in the world, not
Yeah.
of the world. We do have
I
to engage with the world. But
I
you
find
don't, you
arguments
do
like
not
really
need Twitter.
weird because like
You do not
normally,
need Twitter.
yeah, you don't need Twitter. Like I feel like arguments are weird because I like the like ratio of actual arguments in real life is like it's like basically like non-existent. It's like 1%. Like you might have like a bad day or something and then like you road rage or something. Arguments, like actual arguments like happening in real life, that like never happens to me. Normally it's just like discourse or like you're just talking to somebody where you're trying to explain a topic or like it's not like I don't know, like I don't come across like a lot of times where like I'm like super argumentative because I don't
Oh yeah,
agree
I
with
agree.
someone, like because it's like there's not that many people who like that you're gonna come across that is like you completely disagree with. You're gonna have some commonality. You're gonna be able to connect and at some level, right? Because you're human beings, and so like the only way to have like like an intense amount of arguments all the time, and which is like to me a waste of time, is because you take out the human element and you lose that like face to face like value, and so that you get more angry and you do like more. I guess like you say more stupid things. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to go on the internet and just say completely outrageous stuff. It's pretty easy
Yeah,
to go on the internet and say that, like, you can go and just say anything because there's no consequence. There's no
yeah,
like,
but you wouldn't say that in real life, right? Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's like it's kind of insane, like, when you think
Mhm.
about it, right? And so yeah, that's part of it, and then part of it is I think the website's design in and of itself encourages, like, inflammatory content, like,
Yeah.
it encourages replies, it encourages that over something like likes, but yeah,
Hmm.
it's sad, but it is what it is, and it gets you because negativity incites more of a response than positivity. It's why agitprop is so powerful, is because
Hmm.
see something bad, you see something that threatens you, and that's number one concern in your brain, as opposed to something that's good, which is like, oh, that's nice, but like your brain is more geared towards being worried about predators than it is about being happy that you're alive and healthy and stuff.
Hmm.
So really at the end of the day, when you see stuff that it's very deeply studied to purposefully agitate you, and I think that it's a form of slavery. It's a form of slavery to be into this Twitter stuff and always be on this Twitter. So yeah, it's not good.
I guess it is one thing to say that you shouldn't use it. It's another thing to like give people resources and like things in order to make them stop. I guess like in a way it is like similar to any other type of like addiction, I guess, but it's like I'm not sure exactly how the neurochemistry works or whatever, but
It
it is
doesn't
like
really
one of,
matter.
yeah, like you just need to like yeah, I don't know.
It doesn't really matter. It's so hilarious to me. Like we sit down and we spend like 20 years studying the exact like neurochemistry to understand that, oh wow,
This
guys,
is bad for
actually
you.
this is bad. Like, oh yeah, oh wow,
Yeah,
duh, oh
exactly.
joy. Like, yeah, or like, oh yeah, guys, you know what? You should just stop doing it. Wow. Like the only way to well, Twitter, I think, is like can't you just like delete your account and stuff?
Yeah, you
The fact
can.
if any that's what I think it's a great thing. It's a great thing they're locking down the API and stuff because it makes it a lot harder for people to be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna take a little sneak peek," which is how all addictions are. Like if you're smoking and then you quit smoking and then you pass by like an ashtray and you smell the ashes, it'll like kind of be like, "Oh, I want to smoke again." You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So with Twitter, it's probably similar. People look at it, it's like, "Oh, you know what? I'm gonna make an account again," and it's like, that's bad. But now that they're locking down the API, it's harder and harder. Same thing with like Reddit and everything else. So
In a way,
yeah,
it's
if
kind of
anything,
good.
them making the access more restrictive is actually really good.
Yeah. I guess we could transition into talking about communication. Like we're using Discord right now, and like how
Yeah,
people
isn't
are
that
able to.
sad?
Yeah, yeah, because
Yeah,
like this is not
try to
an
use
end to end
XMPP as much as I
encrypted.
can.
What was that?
I try to use XMPP as much as I can, but I
Yeah,
think that the trade-off is that the Discord is like pretty much all my friends that I know use it. Like
yeah,
you go to especially in my school and just like my region in general, everybody's got it like a Discord, either
yeah,
that or an SMS, but pretty much everybody uses the Discord because in America, you're either using there's no such thing as like WhatsApp in America. You don't use WhatsApp. You
yeah,
only use Discord, which is you only use like Telegram, Discord, Facebook Messenger, and like SMS. WhatsApp isn't even like in the top 10 or whatever. I don't know if that's actually how it is, but in practice, that's how it is. So,
mm,
unlike literally every other country on earth, everybody insists on using Discord. Which I mean, I don't really care for using Discord or WhatsApp or either. Like either is really the same. WhatsApp makes these false claims of encryption when like, yeah, it might be encrypted, but where's my private key? Oh yeah, Facebook owns my private key. So like, there's no point to have actually encrypt. It's like, yeah, we promised we encrypted it, but like we can look at it whenever you want, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, if you want actual security, you're meant to be using XMPP or something which is actually like private. So
And
the
could you
problem with
explain that
XMPP is that they
framework?
lack. Oh, what XMPP is?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I made a video about it a while ago. So essentially, XMPP is a open source messaging protocol, a lot like IRC. You get
Hmm.
different clients and different server software, even if you want to run a server, and essentially, it's all interchangeable. It's the exact same as email. So, like on emails, you can make an account on gmail.com or you can make an account on yahoo.com and you can use it on Gmail or Yahoo or on Outlook or whatever, but you can still email anybody who's using anything else. Like somebody on Yahoo can email somebody on Gmail, somebody
Yeah,
on Gmail can email somebody on Yahoo, so on and so forth. XMPP is the exact same, except instead of emailing, it's messaging. So you can do XMPP on all sorts of different softwares, all sorts of different like domains. Anybody can run a server. I run my own.
yeah.
In fact, my XMPP is alex@denshi.org, which is the exact same as my email, which is really cool and nifty. So yeah, you just make an account with a server that you trust. That's a hard thing to do. And then you essentially go and you use it. And most of the time they work pretty good. The only thing that sucks is that voice and video calls, they do work, but not every client has them. So I'm still waiting on them to make a big Linux client which has it because there is one, but it's kind of like it's not that good of a client. So
Hmm.
it's called Dino, and it's not that good. And there's this other web-based one called Movim, which is super weird because it's both a client, right, of XMPP, but it's also a sort of it uses a lot of the XMPP framework because of how customizable it is. It uses it as like a social media platform, and you can
Oh.
make like posts and blogs on it, which is cool if you want to like have an alternative to a personal website. I would think it's a pretty like good via media, like a sort of middle solution because it does help you, self-host if you host your own XMPP server, but also have like an easy interchangeable way for people to see your blogs. But it is kind of weird, and I don't really like it. And also, it's ran in like it's really weird. I don't know. I don't like it that much. I wish they would. They're working on improving it so the voice calls and stuff are better on it. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I hope in the future they come up with one really good universal XMPP client. That would be really sick. But so far we're in a weird situation of everything being split up, which I guess it is what it is. But yeah.
Mhm. Well, I think we've come to like the end of the interview. Do you have anything you want to ask me, or
I mean,
anything we
not
want to talk
really.
about?
Just I want to make sure that I haven't completely like bored you to death. But
No,
yeah,
no, it's all
was
good.
it good? Was it interesting?
It was interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You did a good job. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's
I
that's pretty much my pay grade. So yeah.
I mean, there's only so much we can talk about, right? And so, like, yeah, it's tough because it's like one of those like parasocial like relationship type deals where you don't want people to know too much about you, and you don't want people to like
Yeah, I mean, I'm
get
not
too
going to sit
attached to
down and
you.
talk about the
Yeah,
intricacies of my life, right?
exactly. Yeah,
But I do like, um, yeah, like I don't want to get into like the intricacies of my life, but I do like, talking about some things, which I hope people can look at it and like get a good idea or an example. Because at the end of the
yeah.
day, the only way we learn is from listening to what other people are up to, right? So like, I don't think it's all bad, but yeah.
I think one of the stories you told before that was touching to me was you praying the rosary, and actually
Oh
and
yeah,
yeah,
maybe I should tell that story.
yeah.
So this is kind of linking to the stuff I was talking about religion. So when
Hmm.
I was, I guess this is more about the about me section.
Yeah.
I was born in 2005, so I'm 19 right now. I was raised for about 4 years in my home country of Italy, but then I had to move away to the Middle East for my dad's job after he got laid off on account of the economic crisis. Italy was very mismanaged at the time, and he worked for a public company, so it was not very good. And
Hmm.
we had the fourth kid on the way, soon to be five kids, and it was not looking good for everyone. So we all moved over, and luckily everything worked out. But for the longest time, I'd very rarely be able to go to church. I was able to go to church back when I visited Europe, but I wasn't really we didn't really go that commonly when we were, in the Middle East.
Hmm.
When I was about 16, I think I remember the exact date. It was, I think, Monday, the 17th of January 2022. Let me check if that's actually a real date because I hope it is. Anyways, yeah, no, I was right. Yeah, Monday, the 17th of January 2022. It was a Monday. So Monday, the 17th of January 2022, I started to pray the rosary every single day. I just downloaded like this app off of F-Droid on my iPhone, not my iPhone, my Android phone. I
Hmm.
don't know why I said that on my phone,
Yeah.
and it was like the most basic app ever. It would just have the prayer, and then you would tap, and it would go to the next prayer. And man, that first rosary I ever did, it felt so long. It felt like it was never gonna end because it's like 53 prayers with the Hail Mary alone. There's other prayers too, but like it's like 53, and I'm like, wow, that's so long. I cannot find that app again. I really wish I could, but it was a really good app. I remember using it, and I prayed it consistently for about a little over a year. And by consistently, I mean like every single day. If I couldn't get it done at a reasonable time in the day, I would lock myself in the bathroom and pray it in the bathroom as to not disturb my father, my brother, whoever, because I would always sleep in a bed with somebody else because we just didn't have the space. So I would lock myself in the bathroom and just do it quietly in the bathroom or just some kind of private place. I do it every single day without fail. And after about a year, a little bit over a year, like maybe a year and a month or so, I kind of like got a little bit less consistent about it. Now I'm getting more back into it. I'm doing it every single day without missing a day.
Mhm.
But I think that really I'm still unraveling the graces that I got from that, I think, because that was like something like that, it can only really be inspired by the Holy Ghost. My priest says that all the time. It's like anybody who's just like immediately called to start praying every day, that doesn't just happen out of nowhere. That's
Mhm.
inspired by the Holy Ghost very clearly. So yeah, there's for me that's like I guess if you want to like get into the details of it, like my conversion or whatever. I was always Catholic. I was baptized into the church. I never really renounced the faith. I never stopped believing in God. I never had atheism. I never like went in and started researching other faiths or anything. I was always Catholic. But I, I think I had a severe lack of like consistent practice. I
I
would
guess
go
it's
to church.
discipline, right?
Yeah, yeah, like a
Mm,
severe lack of discipline. I would go to church and I would just look at the confessional. I wouldn't go in, I would look at it and I'm like,
mhm,
I really should go. I really, really should. I know I have to, but I won't today. And that
mhm,
was me for like up until I was 16. It was ridiculous. But yeah, no, when I turned 16, I started praying the rosary every single day and it completely changed my life. Yeah, absolutely. Then I went to when I moved to the US, I started going to the Latin Mass, which I had been planning on for a long time. I always wanted to, but I never had the chance. And I
mhm,
started going consistently to the Latin Mass every single Sunday. And that opened up like a whole new paradigm of the faith, I think. Yeah, and I recommend anybody who's Catholic, um, if you don't regularly go to the Latin Mass, to try to go to the Latin Mass as regularly as possible. You can go to these
mhm,
websites online that show you where all the Latin masses are, and you can find one. I'd highly recommend finding one with the Society of St. Pius X. They're really good, probably the best formation of priests I've ever seen. And you go and you look for those, and those are just the like it'll change your life, absolutely guaranteed. It will completely change your life. So yeah, it may take a while, but it did change my life. Yeah.
yeah. And so, like, the reason why I bring this up is because I thought it was really I don't want to say inspirational, but I thought it was thought provoking, and like in a way, it is an inspirational simply because you don't hear about younger people getting too involved with faith, and so it's nice to hear that there are other people like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, There there are, I'd say, at least there's a vocal minority of them who are. You're
Yeah.
hearing about a lot of people converting back to traditional Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy, especially in the United States,
Hmm.
mostly from a Protestant background, which I find interesting. It tends to be that Protestants convert to the Orthodox faith, and sometimes they start going to the Latin Mass and like Catholicism, and then it tends to be Catholics who maybe turn to atheism or turn to something else, and then they come back to the Catholic faith. Sometimes even come back to tradition, which by tradition I mean the Latin Mass and traditional sacraments and like all that. But you don't really hear a lot about people who like consistently practice the faith and then just so happen to slowly kind of deepen into it, which is what happened with me, where it just took like a like it was very clearly like Our Lady working, like just kind of like slowly unraveling me so I could go and fall into these things, not fall, but you know what I mean, like go and like walk into these things which would lead me to really immeasurable graces, that I'm undeserving of, so it's really, to me, it's no, it's beautiful to see a lot of people that are passionate about the faith. But yeah, I mean, if you were look at like the mainstream statistics or whatever, especially men are less and less interested in organized religion. But the ones which are, the few which are only interested in religions that are actually hardcore. Because if this is true, if this is really God, then I'm not gonna go and be like a boomer and try to treat it like a nominal thing, like, "Oh, I'm just nominally Catholic. I call myself Catholic, or I go to church for the appearance of it." No. If that's really God, then there's no messing around here. You have to be all in. You cannot not be all in. So, it's very important, and I think it's very telling that the modern generation, the people who are religious are very religious. There was this article in the AP News about it where they're talking about the rise of traditional Catholicism and how it's mostly young people. You go to a Latin mass, the average age is like 18 to 20. That's the average age of people. And that's not even including like the children as like a data set because that's like an outlier. Like the average person you'll see there is like a 17 to 25 age range, you know. So and compared to most mainstream Novus Ordo Catholic churches, which is really what most Catholics are raised in, which is mostly old people and especially old women and children, which was predicted by a lot of the people at Vatican II, which is when they made the newer Mass, which is no longer in Latin and less traditional and whatnot. So yeah, the young people they want reverence and they want like a hardcore, strict religion. That's why so many young Protestants are converting to the Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox religion as well, because while obviously we have differences theologically and whatnot, they do have a hardcore spirituality, hardcore mysticism that the youth is very attracted to. So yeah, I think it's it's definitely beautiful to see.
Thanks for listening to the second episode of the Schlop Show. I'm sorry that I had to put it into two parts instead of just one. Just happened to be that way. I just wanted to thank Alex for talking to me. This was actually recorded quite a while ago, and so I haven't really been uploading or anything like that. And this talk specifically was a little bit difficult to edit and like piece together. I didn't want to remove anything, and I also didn't want to censor opinions or anything like that. I think that I think it would be a mistake to do something like that. And also, like, I'm not like the best person to talk about topics such as faith and uh, those types of things, but I do think that it is an important part of an individual's life as well as my own. And so from time to time, I will be dabbling in like other um I guess fields and things like that and just talking about stuff that I don't know too much about, but it's about the learning process, I guess. And it's edifying. So I think that's the important part, right? Is learning from your mistakes and becoming a better person with time, right? And one of my goals is to simply not spread, misinformation or to give as much factual information as I can while simultaneously providing an opinion, right? It should be an informed opinion at least. And that's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but I want to try. And so that's what I'm doing. Hope you enjoy. And thanks for listening.